Steve Jobs. You hear that name and you immediately think of a legend, right? He was the guy who completely revolutionized how we live, work, and play with technology. But what was the secret sauce? What was the magic behind his genius? Well, back in 2005, he gave this incredible speech that basically boiled his entire life philosophy down to 3 simple stories. And today, we're going to unpack those stories to find the life formulas hidden inside.
First off, let's just take a second to remember the sheer scale of his impact. I mean, before Jobs, computers were these boring beige boxes. He gave us the iMac, and suddenly they were art. He gave us the MacBook, and our work wasn't chained to a desk anymore. He rescued us from clunky CD players with the iPod, literally putting 1,000 songs in our pockets. And then, the iPhone put the entire internet in the palm of your hand. And the iPad? A total game changer for media. He wasn't just making products, he was shaping the future.
So, the big question is, how did one guy do all of that? What was his secret? Well, the answer he gave wasn't some complex business school formula. Nope. He said it was all found in the lessons from his own journey, which he shared in one of the most famous commencement speeches ever at Stanford University. All right, so his first story is all about connecting the dots. It's this really powerful idea about trusting your gut and your own unique journey, even when it makes absolutely no sense to anyone else or even to you at the time. It all started when he was just 17. His working-class parents had saved up everything to send him to a college that was just as expensive as Stanford. But after only 6 months, he just wasn't seeing the value. He had no clue what he wanted to do with his life, and he felt like he was burning through his parents' life savings for nothing. So he made what must have been a terrifying decision. He dropped out. Now you gotta understand, this life was not glamorous. Not at all. He didn't have a dorm, so he was literally sleeping on the floor of his friends' rooms. He was returning Coke bottles for 5 cents apiece just to get money for food. And he would walk 7 miles across town every single Sunday just to get one decent meal a week at the Hare Krishna temple. But here's the thing. Dropping out gave him freedom. He could now drop in on any class that just looked interesting with zero pressure for grades. And one of those classes he wandered into was calligraphy. Turns out, Reed College had maybe the best calligraphy program in the country. So he started learning about serif and sans serif typefaces, about the art of spacing between letters. What makes great typography feel so great? It was beautiful and historical and artistic in a way that science just couldn't capture. And he loved it, even though it had absolutely zero practical application for his life. Or, so he thought. Okay, now fast forward a full 10 years. An entire decade goes by. Jobs has left college, he started Apple, and now he's deep in the process of designing the very first Macintosh computer. And this is where it all clicks. As he's building the Mac, all that seemingly useless calligraphy knowledge comes flooding back. He designed it all right into the Mac, making it the very first computer to have beautiful, artistic proportional fonts. If he had never dropped in on that one single class, the Mac never would have had multiple typefaces. And since Windows basically just copied the Mac, it's pretty likely that no personal computer would have them. Wild, right? And here's the big takeaway. Jobs said, you just can't connect the dots looking forward. It's impossible. You can only do it looking backwards. So you have to trust in something. Your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever you want to call it. You have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. And that belief is what gives you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you way off the beaten path. Okay, story number 2. This one is about love and loss, and it's an incredible lesson in how our most crushing, devastating failures can actually pave the way for our greatest moments of creativity. I mean, just look at this contrast. It's staggering. At 20 years old, he and Woz started Apple in a garage. By the time he was 30, it was a $2 billion company with 4,000 employees. He just launched the revolutionary Macintosh. And then, at the peak of his success, he got fired. Publicly, from the company he poured his soul into creating. Can you even imagine the humiliation? The thing that had been the focus of his entire adult life was just gone. He said he felt like he'd let down a whole generation of entrepreneurs. He was so lost that for a few months, he honestly thought about just running away from Silicon Valley entirely. But then, slowly, something started to shift inside him. He realized he still loved what he did. The passion hadn't died, so he decided he had to start over. And what happened next turned out to be one of the most creative periods of his entire life. He started a new company called Next. He started another company called Pixar, yeah, that Pixar, which would go on to create the world's first computer-animated movie, Toy Story. And then, in this crazy twist of fate, Apple ended up buying Next, bringing Steve Jobs right back to the company that kicked him out.
And what's truly incredible is the perspective he gained. He said later that getting fired from Apple was the best thing that could have ever happened to him. Think about that. The heavy weight of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again. It set him free. The lesson? You have got to find what you love. Your work is going to be a huge part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do.
All right, on to the third and final story. This one's about death. It's definitely the most personal, and it reveals the single most powerful tool he used to make all the big, important choices in his life.
When he was 17, he read a quote that went something like, "If you live each day as if it was your last, someday you'll most certainly be right." And that idea just stuck with him. So for the next 33 years, every single morning, he would look in the mirror and ask himself that one simple question. And he said that whenever the answer was no for too many days in a row, he knew something had to change.
Now, for Steve Jobs, this was not just some philosophical thought experiment. About a year before he gave this speech, he was diagnosed with cancer. He got a scan, it showed a tumor on his pancreas, and the doctors told him it was a type that was basically a death sentence. Their advice was to go home and get his affairs in order, which is, doctor speak for prepare to die. They told him he had maybe 3 to 6 months left to live. So he lived with that diagnosis for an entire day. But later that evening, they did a biopsy, and something absolutely incredible happened. It turned out to be a very, very rare form of pancreatic cancer that was actually curable with surgery. He had the surgery, and he recovered. It was the closest he had ever come to death, and it made the whole concept intensely real for him. He said that remembering you're going to die is the best way to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. It's true, right? When you face death, everything else just melts away. All those external expectations, all your pride, all your fear of embarrassment or failure, poof, it's gone. And all that's left is what is truly, truly important.
And this brings us to what might be his most urgent message of all. Your time here is limited. It's not a dress rehearsal, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't get trapped by dogma, which is just living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of other people's opinions drown out your own inner voice. You have to have the courage to follow your heart and your intuition.
So, he wrapped up these 3 stories with one final piece of wisdom. It was a sign-off from an old publication he loved called The Whole Earth Catalog, and it was his final challenge, not just to the graduates, but to all of us. Stay hungry, stay foolish. So what on earth did he mean by that? Well, stay hungry means never be satisfied. Always be eager to learn more, to create the next thing. And stay foolish means stay humble. Be willing to admit you don't have all the answers. Be open. It's a mindset that stops you from ever getting complacent and just keeps you on that path of constant growth. And that's pretty much it. 3 stories, 3 powerful life formulas. First, trust that all those random interests you have, your dots, will eventually connect in a beautiful way. Second, find what you truly love to do, because that passion is the only thing that'll get you through the tough times. And third, remember you're going to die, so live your own life, not someone else's. And that just leaves us with one final thought. What are the dots you're collecting in your life right now, and where do you trust they might be leading you?